a life that's shining, right? That has gone, that is so close to this destination that we're all working towards. Um, but it's still like illuminating, kind of a message or a lesson or
Yeah.
I don't know, hard to describe,
No, it
but
is. No one else
yeah.
can even imagine that you being there, being in that moment, being in the death zone,
Mm.
exhausted, climbing through the night, and that's your guiding light.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's, in a weird way, like the marker of death was like the guide.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dickinson. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations, and it keeps the mission alive. And if you want early access to new episodes and to support what we're building, consider becoming a Spotify paid subscriber. Your support means everything. Now let's jump in so others may live. Evan Kenny, 6 years as an aviation rescue swimmer, and I believe the only other rescue swimmer to have summited Everest, besides myself. And I just stumbled upon you in the news and we connected, and I'm super pumped to have a fellow brother and summiteer on, and just, yeah, excited to get to know you better.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I didn't know that it was probably, I mean, it makes sense that there's no other rescue swimmers that we know of that have climbed. And it's always interesting to like find out what statistics of who summited from where. And, like back home in my small town of Ohio, I assume there's no one else who's gone forward either. So it's just kind of interesting to connect with people who have and
Mhm.
find that overlap.
It is. Yeah, it's a fun world, and those numbers will increase over time. But it's neat that people are getting out there and adventurous and exploring this world. We got the one shot at it, so make
Mm.
the most of it. So you said you grew up in Ohio. Where at?
Yeah, small town. Neapolis basically was the township, and very cornfield dense, small little neighborhood amidst miles of corn and farmland. So I grew up there, and then they had to kind of conglomerate like multiple districts to build one school together.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, Northwest Ohio, kind of Toledo would be the closest major city. Um,
Okay, Northwest.
so-
I spoke out there a while ago, and yeah, you described it well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of open land for sure, and it is great. I think to have that freedom growing up, that kind of open space, um, allowed me to kind of be, who I am from a young age. But then got a lot more exposure joining the Navy and just really opened the horizons.
Yeah. So what drove you to that?
Yeah, I think initially, I mean, I don't really have one specific credit, but I grew up, you know, I was born in 94, so I was in second grade when 9/11 happened. And I think, during my school years, elementary into middle, it was kind of this very strong patriotism, this very strong mission, oriented kind of freedom protection rhetoric that was happening. And, again, small town Ohio, I think that was baked in pretty strongly. And my dad had also served in the Air Force. He wasn't really like, saying that we should join, or my brother and I,
Mhm.
kind of like directing us in that way. But I think it was always something that I knew was an option. And with that kind of climate that I was growing up in, I just felt pretty called to join, and signed up when I was 17, basically. So.
Wow. And signed up knowing that you were going to give air crew rescue swimmer a shot.
Initially, so I wanted to go into buds, and I wanted
Mhm.
to do the SEAL route, but when I went to MEPS and I did all the testing and everything like that, they were like, "Yeah, your vision actually disqualifies you for SEAL training." So,
Really?
um, yeah, I had pretty poor vision, but surprisingly, you could join air
Yeah, I
rescue.
would think like that would not be
I
okay.
know. Yeah, I think the cutoff was like 20/100, for whatever visual acuity, and for buds it was like 20/40. So I missed that mark, and they were like, you could try something else and maybe get LASIK and transfer later on. But so I picked, rescue swimmer, and I thought that was probably the most calling to me because I had done a lot of Boy Scout stuff and first aid, growing up, and I liked that, that kind of being able to be first response.
Hmm.
So of the other options, that kind of appealed to me. So that's the route I went, and I'm actually really grateful that I didn't end up going to Buds and doing all that stuff. Definitely
Yeah. Yeah,
would have done it.
totally, a major pivot, right? So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
saving lives or taking them. I mean, our
yeah,
job, you could do both, but for the most part, you're definitely trying to serve others and save lives. I guess,
absolutely.
I mean, everyone in the military, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. Um,
Right.
but okay, so you went Great Lakes, so that wasn't much of a travel for you.
Yeah,
What
just
time of year were you there?
so it was August. Basically, got there. I think the 2nd of July. It was either the first or the second night we could hear the Fourth of July fireworks going off from
Oh,
Chicago, like, in our compartment. Just
that's
like,
brutal.
nowhere to go except for try to catch up on sleep after a couple first days that you're not. And then graduated like I think end of August or so. But
That's
yeah, it
tough, man. You're
was
there a
hot.
couple days and you're basically in prison at that point,
Oh yeah.
and you're hearing that. That's kind of like if you ever, take a trip to Alcatraz. It was so that was like the most like mentally, emotionally, hard part is they could hear people cheering and just, life happening
Mm.
across the water because, sound carries and everything. I can imagine because those first couple of days you're sitting there going, "What the heck did I just do?" And you're
Almost the exact thoughts. Yeah, it was kind of like I think I was standing against the bulkhead. I had my little yellow or blue jackets manual kind of like facing the corner, and all these RDCs are running around like chirping at people who are not paying attention or not reading. I was like, is this what prison is like? What am I doing here, And
yeah.
then hearing those fireworks, it was like the thoughts of like signing up to serve and protect freedom and then
Hmm.
giving up my own, kind of like it was a big juxtaposition
Yeah, no one
between
knows.
the two, kind of like really presented strongly, especially at 18. I was like just
Yeah.
fresh out of high school. So
Yeah. Your brain's not even fully developed yet, so you're being imprinted. So that's interesting. Yeah, that is a neat spin. Very
mhm,
patriotic growing up, the part of the US that you lived in, coming from a military background, and then you're hearing the explosions of of joy,
yeah.
and yeah, just kind of imprinted that patriotism even more. That's neat. So did you have like dive motivator or any like SAR additional training? Were they doing that in boot camp?
So we did Dymo in boot camp, and then before, so I joined or I signed up for MEPS when I was 17, and then that whole year, like my last senior year of high school, I was waiting to graduate. We had basically a dive motivator back in Ohio. He would take
Oh
us through
wow.
kind of some practice stuff, and then yeah, in boot camp as well. It was pretty much I think
That's
most
neat.
days.
So in the like a Navy dive motivator,
Yeah, he
like
was
learning?
retired SEAL commander. Um, Mike Noss, he was a super cool dude. Really, really dialed in. He had the icy blue eyes that just like pierce your soul when you look at him. And
Hmm.
there was an expectation he always had for performance and respect. So, but yeah, I loved him, and he did a lot, I think, early formative for my training and gave me a strong ability to succeed once I did get into the Navy, to have that kind of like check before it was like, too late or whatever, before you
Yeah,
arrive.
that's amazing. It's so good that they have these programs now. I know when I wrote Common the Chaos, just interviewing, I went through 93, so
Mm,
things are different. The Coast Guard, we were combined back then. I had a Coastie instructor as well, and just how far it's come, and I know
mm,
Marecki had been killed a few years prior to that, and things were changing. We had a dive motivator, and it was all like special ops. Wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and in boot camp out of Orlando, and holding bricks above our head and everything else. But to have that even prior to going in just puts you
mhm.
in a, I don't know, a path to success. I think that's so great, just mentally and everything. I bet just motivationally, you get done with a training session with the blue steel eyes of the SEAL, trainer and you're like you're pretty pumped. Like you're like you can't wait to get there. It's like time is probably going slow at that point. You just want to go.
Totally. Yeah. And that's, I think, I mean, a great label is that dive motivator. He's obviously, we would do trainings and he would kick our ass a lot of the time, but it was building that sense of camaraderie and kind of like cohesion through suffering really early on. Um, yeah, I mean, we did all the mask full of water, tread and flow, just kind of even drown proofing. Not that I was going to do it in rescue swimmer school, but it was great stuff to prepare and excel when it came time to do the training that I needed to.
Yeah, yeah. Drown like even when my kids were young, I had them simulated tied up in the pool, the deep end, because it's not even about like someone's gonna tie you up and throw you in the water at some point in your life. It's about remaining calm. It's about
Hmm.
just, honing those skills where the lifeguard is like blowing the whistle like I'm, abusing my kids. Like, how about all the parents out there, drinking and not watching their kids, and I'm
Mm,
actually training them to do something. I'm like, oh, you're welcome to join if you want. They're like, no, 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 you're fine. Just,
yeah. Isn't
uh,
that ironic?
yeah, that's funny. Well, cool. So you went into, I guess when you went in, did you go directly to after boot camp? Was it rescue swimmer school, then air crew, or air crew, then rescue swimmer school?
Aircrew, then RSS right
Okay.
after.
Yeah, I know they
Um,
flopped it for a while. They may have spun it back around.
hmm,
I'm not sure where it currently is at, but yeah, they then were going because you were people where from what I heard, um, you go from dive motivator straight to air crew, and then you're not really
yeah.
doing, the hardcore stuff. So then you're kind of, do we want to waste the time, going through air crew, and then you're not prepared to go. So I know they're always fine tuning it, and the guys over there are really, doing a lot of great things. So you went to air crew. Tell
Yep.
me about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually, because I think some of the guys who did drop an RSS later on, it could have been, just being on hold in aircrew school for a long time and not really staying in shape. But I was fortunate I classed up right away for aircrew pretty much as soon as I got to Pensacola. Um, there was 5 weeks, I think, ballpark, and yeah, I mean that training was pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I was in great shape comparatively to most of the dry guys, and
Hmm.
kind of felt good through everything. Yeah, not really a lot of like groundbreaking moments, I would say, in aircrew training. Just it was that first formal like schoolhouse. So I remember showing up and kind of like the older guys who were getting close to RSS were like, "All right, welcome. Like, get your get your shit together and figure yourself out. You're a
Hmm.
booter, kind of like that early hazing." But um, it ended up being kind of like an endearing thing later on in a weird way. Um, But yeah, otherwise the schoolhouse was good. I was pretty happy to be there, I remember, and very much looking forward to like getting to RSS. And that was, the big test, right?
Hmm.
Kind of moving through that to secure the position in the job, really. That was like the trial.
Yeah. Yeah. Air crew is just a blast.
Yeah.
You're just playing with toys all day long, and, you know, where other people are, I don't know, some people fail out of air crew. And it's
Yeah. Surprising, but yeah, totally. I mean,
like it's
and then,
too fun to fail.
there's not, it's, I would say more not swimmer guys or contracted swimmers at least aren't usually failing at air crew, but totally happens.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, there's stuff that'll definitely weed out. Just not everyone works well in those environments. So you made it through that, and then did you class right up in RSS?
Yeah, I think I had maybe a week or two in backlog or Starboard D, they called it basically, before I picked up class. And I remember they would have us do like the pre-workouts to like get ready for it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is definitely a higher level than chilling at aircrew and, what the
Hmm.
expectations were there. But yeah, I classed up. I think the first day, we started with somewhere around 40 something, mid 40s, in that initial kind of wave, and they expect most of the guys are dropping basically on one day,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think at least half, that first day or within that first week, just because the first couple days of PT were pretty brutal, but
Yeah.
yeah, I did really well overall. I felt good in the Maltese, and I really found that I liked the medical, the moulage stuff. I was like
Hmm.
really drawn to that, super strong. So um, yeah, I enjoyed actually rescue swimmer school quite a bit, and um, I did have one issue with like bent knee sit-ups, which is like the weirdest abdominal like strength exercise that I just had trouble with. I think I have like thick calves or something, but
Hmm.
that was like a one tricky point for me, but made it through that, and everything else was pretty good.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like life-saving and everything. Were you taking them underwater in life-saving, or was everything on the surface?
It was all surface. Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
changed. And helmets?
Yep. Yeah. They had all the full gear, vest, everything to unsnap and untangle. And yeah, just know we didn't take anyone underwater. We would do underwaters for our own training,
Hmm.
during the kind of conditioning sessions, but we
Yeah.
weren't doing
That's
anything like
it's like
that.
all the
Yeah.
same maneuvers. Our first step was take them under and kind of induce that panic because first thing you're going to do is try to get away from you. But
Hmm.
realistically, and in the fleet, and then, are you going to do that? Maybe, but it's probably to escape. So you're
Yeah.
escaping
Yeah.
anyways.
Okay.
But
Well, yeah, we did. So there was like escape maneuvers basically if a panic survivor like jumps on you, you
mhm,
kind of go underwater and you'd have to do a little bit of grappling, you could call it, to kind of
mhm.
get free. But that I think that was maybe it as far as the underwater stuff.
Okay, nice. What was Take us through like a day in the life of rescue swimmer school. Just want to You're one of the most current that I've had on the show. So I know on the show, on the pod, we've had people back from the Apollo pickup days to that didn't even have rescue swimmer school. Or it was the School of Hard Knocks to
Wow.
every every level. So it's just neat to see the progression, like from first inspection to end of day. What did that look like?
Yeah, it's kind of cool to go back and revisit all this stuff, because it has. I mean, I'm the newest person maybe, but I think it was it was 2013 when I was in
Yeah,
RSS.
so it's even changed since then.
But yeah, so for me, we had our class. We would kind of rally up by aircrew school and head out in the mornings, just kind of marching over. And one of like our class rituals, we would have a damsel of the day. So we would, kind of like we would talk amongst ourselves as we were getting to the schoolhouse and be like, all right, who are we gonna save today? What's the damsel in distress? Is Angelina Jolie or Halle
Hmm.
Berry, whoever, and that's like the woman or the kind of icon for the day that we're gonna use
Hmm.
our efforts to protect. Get to school, yeah, they line you up on the pool deck. Usually, not always, there's a uniform inspection of some sort. Usually NSUs, and then pretty much if there's no inspection, it's just straight into PT. Usually ground, just kind of. They had a pretty set curriculum at that point. It was kind of like
Hmm.
they could only do X amount of exercises, but they would do them slower or faster, or they would really like stretch out what they could to make it harder in different ways.
Hmm.
A lot of running involved at that time as well. And then there was usually like a schoolhouse component where you'd learn about, different types of gear, different types of rescue techniques, some type of learning environment, generally. And then there's going to be pool training as well at some point. Um, so yeah, but basically pool training could be a multi-survivor scenario. You're given a couple guys, you have to go in and assess who needs help first, disentangle, practically use the skills that you just learned. Um, and then there's conditioning as well. So doing sprints, basically water in the water, mass fin snorkel, doing underwaters as well, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
by the end of the day, you're pretty cooked. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what time we were finished, but getting home in time to like feast at the dining hall and just like eat everything possible. And then we had these aircrew shirts that we'd have to stencil like with black markers so you could have your name on this like white shirt every
Hmm.
night. You lay your stencil and you do that for like a good hour. And water bottle stencil you have to maintain. So just a lot of little things like that. Check uniforms, diligence on all your gear, diligence on all your lessons and what was coming up next. So that's
Nice.
about it.
Yeah, that's. changed quite a bit. I know it even has since then. So it's neat to see kind of the evolution of, they're always learning, always trying to do things better. Not every change is always for the best, but I think good intentions, and there's enough people looking at it and enough, lessons, learned from the past, and not always
Yeah.
from the best things in the past that, so that's awesome. So where there's still a high attrition rate, what was different about you? What got you through it?
Mm. I can't say exactly for sure, what, but I think I have a capacity to like get over the thing, whatever the moment is, that's like asking me to back out and set that aside. And I also have a very strong personal desire to finish what I started. Um, so I referenced Boy Scouts a little bit earlier in the first aid thing, and
Hmm.
I had joined, early Cub Scouts. My parents put me in it, and then when I did the Boy Scout ceremony to become a Boy Scout, they were like, "Why do you want to be a Boy Scout?" And I was like, "I want to become an Eagle Scout." And that was my reason. It wasn't like to go camping or like, learn about fishing or whatever. It was like
Hmm.
I was like 11 or 12. That's what I said. And at some point during the scouting years, and I get to high school, and I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So I kind of dropped out and I let it go. But then later, another year and a half or so, at that point, I was like, thinking back, I was like, I really said that I wanted to become something. I really said that I wanted to complete and achieve something. And I quit on that. And I didn't really like how that sat with me rather. And
Hmm.
so I reached out to my old scoutmaster and I talked to him. I was like, hey, can I come back? Is it too late? He said, no, like if you can work, we can make it happen. So I really busted hard to obtain that. And it was one of the things that I think achieving early on, like it showed me that I could persevere and it showed me that there is a way to accomplish the things that I want to. So when I got to RSS and I was like, I remember specifically at times thinking like, fuck, this run is hard, or like whatever this thing is difficult. I could just stop right now. It'd be easy to just kind of let it go. But I remembered and I like had that kind of impacted memory from before of like finish what you started and like you can make it through this. The pain, everything is going to go away. And
Yeah.
after you're done with this run, you're not even going to think about it anymore. So I think early on I started to build that out, really
Hmm.
strong.
It's the same with mountains, right? You get out
Yeah.
there training, get out there climbing. Like it's if you think about it, if you get in your head too much, it's dumb. You're climbing up just to climb back down, and it's brutal, especially
Hmm.
the stuff we've done. And gravity's on your side on the way
Hmm.
down. Like it's easy, but then when you're
Hmm.
down, you're back in your head, and it's like, no, I set out to accomplish that, and now I didn't, and you have to live with that. Has that been because that can be dangerous in itself as well.
Sure.
Have you had failures in your life that you've been able to baseline and like find contentment with that it's okay to fall short because you learned something along the way?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, um, I love what you said about, just the gravity. It's easy to let it kind of bring you back down. And it's quicker. But I think in terms of, I don't can't reference a specific failure here, but in terms of my relationship with failure as a whole, like I look at it as kind of a requirement. Um, I think it's like an old NASA saying, failure is not an option in one of their missions. Um, but I believe it is like a requirement. I believe failure is imperative to success because I have to fail at something over and over again. Every time that I don't do it properly or correctly, it is informing me of a better way to do it. So I think it's critical to the successes that I have, um, all the little failures along the way. And I think when I accept the small failures, and embrace them and the lessons that they give me, then it will lead ultimately to a greater success, like the ones that I've been able to have.
Yeah, that's good. It's well said. So important for people to hear that too.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
some they'll turn around at the easiest of
Mm.
obstacles, like the first thing, oh, I'm out, and
Hmm.
that's dangerous in itself because are you truly living life, the way that you're wired to be? Maybe
Hmm.
that's I don't know. I just can't imagine that. But then on the opposite end of that, you can get summit fever, you can, kill
Hmm.
yourself trying to just hammer something out. And it's like, take a step back, analyze the situation, realize, maybe you're taking the wrong approach on whatever you're trying to accomplish, or maybe this purpose that you think you have is, outside of your control, and you have to accept that. Otherwise, you just live a life of misery. So that's
Absolutely.
interesting. You see a lot of like mountaineers, because you're so humbled by the mountains. But when you have a mix of, military and, what we did, and then on both ends of it, I think you have a lot of wisdom when you're done with that. There's always kind of the pre-version of Evan of being in the military versus
Hmm.
after things you learn. Same with Everest and other things that you've accomplished that we'll talk about. So just makes for a wiser individual. You got to share that stuff. People can learn from it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, that kind of metaphor of like always driving forward no matter what. To me, I imagine like we're at a fork in the road, and if I'm just driving to this one path blindly, I'm up against a brick wall. I'm trying to chip away at it over and over. When if I back up a little bit, like you said, reassess, it's like, oh, that fork in the other direction is completely open. I can go down that path, and I don't have to like. I'm still moving forward. It's just the retreat, maybe the pause in the action can really help to open that perspective.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, you see it all the time. Um, okay, so you went from there. You were an AW, right?
AWR, yeah.
AWR. And where'd you go from there?
So they take you over to A school, basically just a different side of the base,
Oh, that's
Pensacola.
right. Everything's in Pensacola now.
Yeah. So, and that was AWRA school, I think is around 9 months, where the S's to like, I don't know, like a month and a half or I don't know, it's much shorter because the Romeo guys, we had to do all the anti-submarine
Hmm.
warfare training and learn all that. So it was a bit longer, but I enjoyed, Pensacola was nice to kind of be
Yeah.
there for a bit. And
Yeah, we
um,
had to go to Millington. Nothing
oh,
against
good.
Tennessee,
Oh, Tennessee, okay.
but Pensacola. If you
You
have to
should,
choose
I
between the
mean,
two, I'll take that.
great, yeah. No contest, really. But yeah, that schoolhouse was good. Um, I remember, I mean, a lot of that was just consistent, day after day education and academics. But
Mhm.
in boot camp, I was the cadence caller, so I got to do that again at A school, and it was kind of cool to lead the whole all the AWs, like, going down through Pensacola and calling up cadence. And there was a little bit of, rivalry between the other aviation rates at that point, the AOs or the AMs or whoever, and we'd like chirp cadences at each other as we're marching by. It was a cool kind of environment.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's funny because it's to someone who's not in the military, it might seem like a very militant thing because it is, but the
True.
camaraderie comes at so many different levels, and
Yeah.
that's one of them. You don't go to like a Microsoft campus and you see people marching and sounding off cadence, the developers to the the
Yeah.
engineers or anything. So that's neat.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very unique. Like you said, you don't see it really anywhere else.
So then from there, where'd you go?
So after that, I got orders for FRS. So I went to San Diego, and that was another about a rest of a year, I would say. So there was SEER. That was a 2 week ballpark course in San Diego. We went to Warner Springs, California.
Yeah, how
Um,
was that?
that was a good time.
Yeah, no one says that. Says
Honest,
it.
yeah, honest to God, I really I liked that suffering that we got to do. It really showed me a lot about my own mental world because when I was very dehydrated and malnourished and like sitting in this tiny little concrete,
Hmm.
square box with a bag over my head, um, and just with nowhere else to go, with nothing to do except to be in my own mind, and try to tune out this blasting radio that they're
Yeah.
doing. Um, it was I think in a weird way like my first introduction to meditative practices
Hmm.
and kind of like what capacity I could get to with my mind. So yeah, I mean, I love the field stuff. I think that was great. The learning of the land and how to navigate, and that was really cool. And then the prisoner simulation portion was definitely tough. Um, I definitely did not have like what objectively you could call as a pleasant experience overall. You're getting blasted with cold hoses in the middle of the night and
Yeah.
beaten and thrown around, and you know, internally the outcome again. I think I learned in another way. It became this metric of like suffering is a fertilizer for growth in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And through this FR or rescue swimmer school training and this overcoming and this like I can persevere through a lot. Um, and I think it was an impressive, empowering experience, SEER school for me.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah. And anyone who goes through, they have their unique experience, and it's an experience of growth. It can be of traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
he can go, one way or the
Mm-hmm.
other.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, like the whole meditative thing. I don't know. I don't think they've incorporated anything like that. It's like that would be a good, mindset exercise to help, but I know they want you to also go through it without any, you know, they want you to experience that trauma.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that that kind of sets you on that path. I know I've certainly wished I would have done that. There's a SEAL prisoner next to me. I remember he's crapping in his little can they give you,
Yeah.
and then he
Yeah.
like fell over, and then they ran over and dragged him out, and you did what they do to prisoners that are disruptive. And then
Uh-huh.
the whole time we're like knocking, trying to do codes and trying not to, I don't know, to go crazy, but also trying to figure out how to escape or kill the guards or whatever. Just keeping our mind, from going nuts. But to be in a meditative state is probably a little bit more healthy, just to kind of
Yeah.
embrace the suck.
Yeah, just be in the now with again where you're at. I think one of the coolest moments we had, they'd make this big pot of rice one night while you're in prison camp, and they're like giving it out. They're like officers first, only the officers get your plates. So they all get their plates, and they're like, all right, you have to eat. And our main, like the officer captain, who was like, no, we have to wait for the enlisted to get their food, and then we can all eat together. And the lead, POW guy was like, how dare you defy me? You have to eat. And he like throws this big pot of rice all over the ground. And he's like, now they don't get any food. So what are you going to do about it? And the officer in command, he like looks at the guy, he looks at his plate of rice, and he just slams it on the ground. And he's like, if they're not eating, like we're not eating. And then all the officers in turn like threw their plates on the ground. And it was again like this huge moment of like solidarity and
Yeah,
triumph against, you can't take anything from us, right?
yeah,
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of cool moments in SEER
yeah,
school
that's
that
powerful.
happen organically.
Yeah, and the state of physical state that you're in, mental,
Mhm.
emotional, spiritual at that point too. It'd be hard for listeners who haven't been through that. And that's just a small micro subset of the reality of a POW camp compared to, actual
Yeah,
prisoners of war. But
yeah,
it's giving that insight, and knowing that, there's a good chance you're going to get out of there in a couple days, no matter what they tell you. All
yeah.
right, let's not give too much away about
No.
SEER. So then you go to FRS, you're learning to fly in helicopters, all the interesting. So you were in the Romeo?
Yeah, yeah. I was at 41 in San Diego.
Okay. Was that the first time you did jumps, or did you do jumps out of Pensacola?
I actually don't remember if we did jumps in Pensacola.
I don't know, they're not. There's no
Yeah.
helicopter squadrons there anymore. I remember when
I
I was
think.
there, there was an H3 squadron, so we jumped. That's actually my first jump behind me.
Oh, nice. That's exciting.
And then we got dunked in the Dolphin, like a Coast Guard helo came around and got us.
Cool.
But yeah, I don't think they're doing it anymore, which is, to me, it's strange because that
Yeah.
could be a eliminating factor right there because that,
Totally.
gosh, it's legit, and that could throw some panic your way.
Yeah, I mean, we jumped out of the tower for training and stuff, but it's by far not the same,
Yeah,
And I honestly I don't think for whatever reason we did. I think they tried to get it when they could, but not every class would be able to. So I'm pretty sure my first jump was in San Diego there in the Bay.
nice. It's a fun
But
place to
yeah, it
jump.
was a really cool experience. I mean, the first flight, just picking up and like being in a helicopter, I was like, hell yeah, this is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Um, used to feel that weightlessness, and then yeah, doing the jumps and going onto the little SAR boat and gearing up with all the guys driving out there. Yeah, I definitely knew I was in the right place, doing something that I was very capable of, and it felt right. Yeah, just overall felt right.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So if it don't, you
Yeah,
just did a lot of training for
yeah, yeah, yeah,
this ain't right. And that it does happen. It's rare.
yeah.
But so from there you went to stationed in Japan?
Yeah. So after, about a year or whatever in the FRS, got orders to Japan. I was at 51, and the other guy in my class, he got orders 77. Both. So there was two Japan orders, and there was only two of us in the class. So it was kind of just a toss up. We were like, I don't know, man. We'll just pick one, and we'll both go together and figure it out.
Mhm.
But I was
What's the
actually,
difference between the two? Like have
yeah.
you attached
So
a different um I don't know. Were you on a carrier or?
I mean, 51 is, I guess, more expeditionary in terms of like they go on small debts with destroyers and cruisers, sometimes frigates occasionally.
Mhm.
And then 77 is carrier based. So they're always
Okay.
out on a same rotation, kind of cycle with the carrier. But yeah, I enjoyed the 51 kind of cycle. It was around 2 or 3 months, at kind of the home squadron. And then we would do 2 or 3 months out at sea pretty consistently. So it required like a high level of readiness all the time, which I think it just became baked in, to the schedule. But versus like going out for those like 7 to 9 month carrier deployments.
Hmm.
I landed on a carrier and kind of like toured a couple times during my deployments on the destroyers, and I was like, I'm very glad that this is not my lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, it's even a different mission set as well. I mean, because
Very.
I was on a carrier, did two deployments, and you're very much focused on that starboard D. And
Hmm.
back then we were paving the way for well, where CSAR is now. I mean, it's so night and day. And I guess even before that, and Seawolves and everything else were definitely paving the way. But
Hmm.
it's just such a different mission set to what
Hmm.
it is now. But yeah, that would be interesting. So did you go to the Persian Gulf? Were you ever deployed out there?
No, I was basically the whole focus of our mission was South China Sea, to Japan, and then up by kind of Korea. At that time, that
Hmm.
was the climate. There was a lot of like freedom of navigation operations, they called it, with China kind of pushing out into South China Sea with some artificial islands, and
Yeah.
our mission was to kind of contest that and be like, hey, no, like this is still open waters, and um, so, yeah, it was a lot of WSC, a lot of hours spent just kind of patrolling and protecting destroyer, mom, cruiser, whoever we were with.
Hmm.
And there was a couple times, I mean, I don't know if you remember the movie, The Interview with like James Franco, and they did like this whole assassination of Kim Jong-un, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
like a big international concern. So I got
Like
deployed.
thanks.
Yeah, I got deployed like over basically like beginning of December till January, just to sit outside of North Korea and make sure there was no kind of event. We'd be there for missile defense basically. But
It's gotta be a little hairy. I know, like when you're in, you're out there, you're front lines. You never know. The rumor control will
totally.
take you in a spin. So you're launching. Was there any sketchy things that you launched on?
Yeah, I mean we flew pretty much loaded every day we would do a flight on that deployment, and we actually did pick up an RF like lock of a missile launcher, like a manpad, on our helicopter at one point while we were flying, which was like, you get the alerts, you get the indications like, hey, you're targeted right now.
Hmm.
And again, given the climate, like you don't really know how serious things are, is it going to escalate or not? So we did our evasive maneuvers and we got, down and away. But it's fortunately nothing transpired, right? But you just don't always know. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that alone was probably the one standout experience. Um, and you're surrounded by all these, you don't know who's the quote unquote bad guy or what could be the
Hmm.
danger, the threat lurking. Um, so yeah, I guess looking back on it, it's pretty intense. But again, at the
Yeah, it
time,
is.
it's kind of just focusing on the mission.
Yeah, you're doing your thing, but yeah, when you get out, you have lots of time to think. And it's like,
Right.
holy crap, that was a, yeah, we did crap ton of, double SC in the Gulf, and you'd just be launched out there. And you're right, you don't know, good or bad.
Hmm.
You're hovering down, taking, I'm a photographer now,
Hmm.
just sitting there, feet hanging out, M240 swung out, and then
Hmm.
some dude like runs across the deck, and you're like, what's he running for?
Right.
We got the picture.
Right.
Do we hop on the guns? Pilot's like, no, we'll head back.
Hmm.
Okay. So then you're like done, like heightened, back down,
Hmm. Hmm.
compartmentalized. All right. I'm not going to think about that for, 30 years until I talk about it on a podcast later.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point about threat response. And I think a lot of military folks maybe with kind of that triggering going on and then that quick like suppression of the threat response.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of mental health stuff that we could talk into, but it's interesting to see kind of where it actually maybe lies or what happens.
Mhm. Yeah. So you made it 6 years.
Yep. Yep.
No crashes or anything.
Fortunately, no. Couple of in-flight emergency, like not crazy emergencies, but um, stuff we mitigated in flight,
Yeah.
but always made it back down safe, which was very good.
Well, landing on the back of a smaller ship, that's a controlled crash anyways. Like every time you guys got good at it. Like, do they still do like was it RAST?
Yeah, yeah, the rest. So I'll try to paint a picture that's a really actually interesting piece there. So usually we're flying at night, middle of the night, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. You're mostly exhausted. We're coming in. The pilots, everyone's on MVGs. They're coming in the back of the ship, which is at this point, I don't know, dimensions wise, but a little bit bigger than the helicopter can safely
Right.
fit on.
Slightly.
Um,
There's a circle.
yeah, not much of a margin for error. The ship is pitching and rolling, to the sea state, and then I'm hanging out the door, kind of like laying on my belly, gazing down, trying to tell the pilot like where he's lined up over this RSD, this catching device, and the probe is coming down. So it's a very communication intensive moment
Hmm.
where I'm giving cues, okay, forward this much, back this much, left, right, you're rolling now, it's going to come up here, and then there's a moment when you have to be able to call like now, 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 and seizing that opportunity to land right and not slam the helicopter down,
Yeah.
but place it firmly so that you can be kind of caught and safe. So very, yeah, very dynamic event that you do every time. Um, and you kind of have to get used to it and adapt to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And your pilots, they're good. They're, I
Yeah,
mean, they're
yeah,
they're all good, but when you're landing on a carrier, we would do our DLQs just to keep the qualifications up as often as we could, but we weren't doing it every mission. So
right.
um, yeah, there was definitely some sketchy times for us doing that, and then just getting the rest or
Mhm.
hypher or like any of these things where it's like you got to keep your quals up. It's like this sucks. We
Yeah.
need a refueling boom. That would be scary too, I think, because then you got this big net coming towards you and
You did like in flight, like
hyper.
hyper. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
But that was like we would never. I mean, obviously keep the qual, but like we would never do that.
I'd rather try to land in the water.
Yeah, it's like yeah. There was never an opportunity or like really a need, I think. But yeah, qualification wise, it's a pretty neat one. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
trust. It requires a ton of trust from the front and the back. Uh,
Hmm.
and that again is kind of unique to any other maybe military job where you work so closely with officers, especially
Yeah,
as an
for sure.
enlisted person.
Yeah, yeah. I read it is documented in a few different places, but it's probably one of the closest relationships. Like you have other special ops groups where you have, SEAL teams, ZOD and
Right.
stuff, SWIC that are, officer and they're just side by side, but um yeah, it's very unique.
Hmm.
Even in a fixed wing, there's a difference there, but in the helicopter, like every single person matters. You're making life and death
Hmm.
choices. Like you're saying, there's that small circle with the wheels have to go, inside of too much forward. You got a rotor strike. You're going down too much pitch on the deck, and you're striking this way. You're going off the side of it, and and it's happened many times. It's
Totally.
it's horrible. Wow. So, okay. So you survived it. How's your back?
Yeah, that was not doing well when I got out. A lot of lower
Yeah.
back stuff, some cervical stuff, um, in general, you know. But it was manageable. Like when I got out of the military, I was definitely um, was not super stoked. There was a lot of times, actually one of my buddies got like a back surgery while he was in, and when I got out, I would message him, be like, "Hey, like I'm starting to get this. Is this kind of what you were feeling? Like it's getting worse?" And he's like, "Yeah." So just feeling that, kind of deterioration, but
Hmm.
I chose to continue doing pretty physically demanding work afterwards and went into, well, snowboard instructing was not too bad, but ski patrol and then wildland firefighting later on. Uh,
Yeah.
those things were like very, very intensive, laborious jobs. So um, it got to a point where it wasn't a sustainable form of work for me anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many people in, our job or any special ops or search and rescue, or you get into first responder, you just keep like hopping to
Hmm.
those traumatic environments.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of it is unconscious.
Hmm.
Maybe it's something in our childhood, maybe it's, something, along the way that we now are good at because we're in control, or we think we are, and we're trying to, do the right thing, and it makes us very effective. Was there anything in your life where you feel like that was driving you there, or do you think it was just a personality or a mindset, or yeah, I'll let you talk.
That's a great question. And I think, even stemming back to that kind of sense of early patriotism, even the Cub Scout stuff is like, be prepared. That's like the motto in Boy Scouts,
Hmm.
and do a good
Is
turn
that the two
daily.
fingers?
Yeah, Cub Scouts is two, Boy Scouts is three. Uh,
Nice.
but Yeah, so like this whole early, conditioned kind of ideology around helping people, and then finding this "so others may live" motto, going from all of this stuff as a young man into a society that I think doesn't necessarily maybe expect, but there is an expectation of willingness to do for others, as a man. I feel. So I think for me, it just kind of, I had this skill set that I had built and I was really good at sacrificing and kind of pushing myself in ways that others might be afraid or choose not to do. So I was like, what other roles, fit well for me with this skill set that I have and with this kind of framework or this ideology that's been built. So yeah, there's a lot that we could, the conditioned behaviors of what we do and why. That's a very interesting pipeline to go down. But
Hey,
um,
you're the guest.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's
I love that stuff because it's interesting because as you know, I'm 50 now, and as you get older, you have that time to reflect on these journeys that, we've been on, and I know yours and mine are unique from each other, but we have a lot of overlap, and it's just, I don't know, it's so fascinating to just understand just why.
mm,
Why did I make these choices and what led me to here? And it's this, I don't know, it's just fulfilling this purpose. But yeah, no, feel free to. You have a lot of wisdom. I know you spent some very special time in India, kind of finding your way, and we could
mm.
talk through that, and then what led you to Everest.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, in just a brief way, this aspect of what you're saying, like why do we do the things that we do, um, is as good at introspective practices or meditation as we can become. And that I've spent a lot of time maybe working in, it's still, I think, the infinite unanswerable maybe question. Well, yeah, I guess just in general, that kind of how deeply can we actually know ourselves? Like what level of introspection through meditative practices or mindful practices can we get to? And I think it's this infinite question. It's almost unanswerable. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of behaviors or awareness that I've got specifically by observing my parents, and kind of like looking at the traits that they exhibit and express, and like trying to see what parts of myself I embody from that. And it's, I think people in a large way in Western culture, we don't spend as much time with our parents. We're quick to
Mhm.
become individualized and move away. In a
Yeah,
lot of Eastern cultures, they live with their parents or they have them around. And there's so much learning that can be done from who we literally came from and genetically, like where our behaviors arise.
yeah. Family of
Um,
origin.
exactly. So there's so much to unpack there. And I think the litmus of how can we change our behaviors or how can we understand them is like how aware of them can we be. Um, and even with the awareness as the first step, it's like it's still an
Mhm.
uphill, very challenging journey, you know.
It sure is because, yeah, I mean, a lot of people choose not to want to know because then
Hmm.
you have to admit it and you have to, like, I am like my parents, and maybe it's not the best traits, or you're trying so hard to be different, but maybe those traits are okay. You just have to
Hmm.
hone them, in a way that, is healthy and positive, and not look at them as, this is a negative.
I look at it like a lot of the tradition, you know, that we see even in the military, right? And there's historical aspects that we want to honor and bring forward. And lessons or behaviors that my parents have done that I get to choose as this sovereign self. I am now this new life that I can bring forward the traditions that resonate and that mean a lot to me in this generation that we're existing in. And I can also choose to let go of traditions as well that no
Mhm.
longer are applicable. So I think it takes discernment. It takes like an actual intentional moment because otherwise you're just people, myself included, will just go straight down the same the train tracks that have been laid before us,
Mhm.
unless there's that decisive moment to say either I'm going to keep this or I'm not. And there's a lot of valuable growth that can happen just by taking that one moment to decide and choose.
Yeah, yeah, that choice piece is huge. If you want to break the
Hmm.
cycle. If you want to
Hmm.
continue it, there's the train tracks. Head down that path. So during you went on a very spiritual journey in India,
Hmm.
correct? For like how long?
So it's 3 months in India, and then yeah, the 2 months in Nepal for Everest, basically. So
Okay, did India lead into Everest?
totally, yeah.
Was that intentional? Hey everyone, this podcast doesn't pay for itself, which is why I launched Kick Ass, Keep Calm in the Chaos merch line. It's not just about a slogan, it's a mindset, a mission, a way of life. Plus, it's an attention getter as random people see and ask about your dope gear. It provides an opportunity to share your unique story with others to help spread some calm across humanity. Every shirt, hat, or sticker you buy goes straight into keeping this podcast alive. The incredible guests and stories, and the impact of their experiences. Tap the link or visit shop.calminthechaospodcast.com to gear up today. Thank you so much for helping support the mission so others may live.
So nothing about Everest was really a plan, which sounds kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
when I when
For
I
for all the
showed,
listeners, it is crazy. Don't just show up on Everest.
yeah, when I showed up to Kathmandu with literally basically nothing except for a backpacker's backpack and a pair of hiking boots I got in Dharamshala in India. Uh, I had to rent every single piece of gear from the Kathmandu stores. Fortunately, they have everything that you could possibly need, but I rented everything or sourced everything there within a matter of a couple hours. And then I meet all the people on my team who had been planning their gear list for years and doing
Mhm.
other prep climbs and
Right.
really,
Doing it the right way.
yes, the appropriate, standard practice. Um, maybe the responsible way, perhaps. But
Okay.
um, so it was kind of an interesting place for me to land. But yeah, India, it kind of came this big, I would say, spiritual moment in my life happened as a result of the pain that I was dealing with in my body. After I got out of the military, there was a lot of suffering in my back and my body physically, and also a lot going on mentally in terms of loss of identity, disillusionment with like, what is my purpose now that I'm not in the military?
Mhm.
Who am I? And a lot of kind of confusion around that led me to some really dark, depressive times. Um, I was plagued with a lot of suicidal ideation and suicidal thought for several years after I got out, and I did actually have an attempt at one point to take my life, but
Mhm.
fortunately didn't work, and continued to kind of be supported by a partner I was with at the time and my family, and just kind of continued that march. But I didn't really have any good moments of clarity for quite a while until um, I decided to leave the partner I was with when I was in college at Northeastern and really invest in kind of letting go and finding, truth and letting truth come to me. And um, meditation came to me, physical therapy and yoga came to me. Um, and I actually, experienced a lot of change and growth through basically psychedelic assisted therapy as well. And that really was a big driver for me in opening up into kind of the mindset that I carry around my spirituality now. So
Mhm.
from there, it became this kind of interest in yoga and these practices that took me kind of serendipitously to India. I didn't plan on it, but I planned on doing a semester abroad in Australia, which essentially got canceled because at the last minute, the classes that I had signed up for were not available. So I had to kind of be like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I've already kind of decided that I wanted to do this, and booked a flight to India because I wanted to do a teacher training for yoga. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just take the semester off and I'll just travel India and see what arises. So India experience was very opening, very
This was
deepening.
a one-way ticket.
Yeah, yeah, just pretty much I left December 28th, 2024, with just a flight to India and nothing else, no plans really. Just I knew I was going to do a yoga teacher training, but I didn't really have anything established. And um, so it all just started to formulate and kind of move through the country. Had some really powerful experiences. I got to meet the Dalai Lama again, very serendipitous happening there, and just some really, really wonderful human beings I met along the way that kind of helped guide me. And there was several mentions of Nepal and this aspect of Everest. I always knew. Obviously, everyone's like, "Oh, like it, of course we know about it," but I'm not a mountaineer, and I never really had. I climbed Fuji in Japan, which is like I don't know, 13,000. So it's
At
not.
least it's something.
Yeah. Um, but this kind of concept, my yoga philosophy teacher gave us during one of our classes. He was like, there's this kind of spiritual path that people can walk, and everyone, maybe we see this kind of peak or this enlightenment, we know it exists, but kind of how you said before, like not everyone's going to want to choose to do that. And he compared it to, climbing mountains, and some people see the mountains and they think they're beautiful, but other people like they see them and they want to climb them. And he alluded to like Everest being this, this kind of great journey. And um, yeah, I just kind of thought about it. I was like, I don't know. I mean, it could be right. Like maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe I have this opportunity. I had healed so much of my body kind of through the yoga practices, and I felt very strong at this time. Um, so I just kind of went online and found an Everest expedition team and reached out to them. And it was 2 days basically before they were cutting off for signups. So I
I was going to say
really,
that's like last minute. That's usually
yeah,
because it's not like there's a ton of teams or anything. I mean, there's so was this a Western guided or
yeah, it
India?
was Western guided. It was Summit Climb basically. They have a couple of leads, one from UK, who was our team lead, David O'Brien, and Dan Mazur, who was basically the US kind of advisor. He was doing all the stuff from Kathmandu, basically,
Okay.
while we were out there. But yeah, those are the two kind of in charge, more or less. And I talked to Dan on the phone and I was like, hey, like, I have Navy experience. I have ski patrol. Like, I know how to be in cold weather and work with ropes and do rescue. And
Yeah.
I was a wildland firefighter, so I know how to carry heavy shit on my back and like climb for very long periods. And he's like, yeah, I mean, you have all the pieces, right? And whether or not you want to integrate that in this moment, like that's, it's a possibility. So it was just kind of like a full body yes, and just a decision like it felt like this greater thing was guiding me, right, in a way towards this climb. In the same way that I think historically I've worked for, so others may live, or a mantra that's like something greater than self. Something greater than self was kind of guiding me to
Mhm.
this experience. And I didn't really know why I was supposed to go, whether or not I was supposed to summit, whether or not I was supposed to maybe
Sure.
help someone along the way. But I just trusted in this kind of call um, to go for it. And that's how I ended up getting there.
It's amazing. So along the way, just the trek into base camp can just, blow people away. Because for me, I was going for the summit. I was climbing the seven summits,
Okay.
peaks on the seven continents.
Was this your last
Um,
one?
no, it's number four.
Okay.
But I didn't put much stock into just the trek itself. And
Hmm.
to me, that was the most eye-opening. I mean, you're there immersed in the highest peaks, just surrounding you in the Himalayas. You're immersed with Sherpa, which are just
Hmm.
amazing, right? Just I don't recommend people climb Everest, but I do recommend people spend some time with Sherpa. Just such I still have lots of friends and it's a small community. So
Hmm.
what was your experience of just the trek in?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think much of it leading up as well because I was, this is for a lot of people, the trek to base camp is a big endeavor that
Mhm.
they
That's
will
it.
just do alone, yeah. And I would see a lot of those people and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a weird parallel. Um, like they're on their mission and I'm like just starting kind of
Hmm.
mine. This is like the prep mission. Um, but
Yeah,
it
these people
was
are an air crew and they're not going to rescue swimmer school.
that's it, yeah, and I don't know if you had that same thought when you were there,
Mhm.
but that was
Lots
exactly
of mountains, yeah. It's a
kind of the
lot are
experience.
just treks, which is great. That's entry level where most people should go. And then
Yeah,
there's the actual climb, and that's a very small subset of humans that will ever even attempt something like that. So yeah, it's very common.
yeah, and I think of that even I don't know what year you climbed exactly, but you
2011.
probably what's that?
2011.
11. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's probably changed a lot, since then, even. And I'm not sure if you saw as many people who probably shouldn't still be on the actual climb portion, maybe, but definitely a couple coming across a couple of different people, like especially in the ice fall,
Mm.
who it's just like, I don't think you belong here. Like, not
Isn't
to be
that funny?
judgmental,
Because you didn't have the climbing experience,
but
and you're you're judging them. It's
yeah,
hilarious. But I'll say I'm on your side here, okay? Um, you're jumping out of helicopters. We're
right.
highly trained from that perspective. That doesn't mean you're ready to climb Everest, but you're also a snowboard instructor. You've done the mountains and the snow and everything else, firefighting. Yeah, you're carrying the pack. You have a lot of the components that you are very unique that you could sidestep into this, and you were on this journey of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't just doing it to go check a box.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it drives me crazy because there's usually a handful of bad apples, but if you look around, for the majority, these are people that this is their dream. They're working
Mm-hmm.
for this. They've their whole life, whatever. They're skilled mountaineers. Most of them are repeats, Sherpa and guides. So they're on multiple. But when you're not ready, and the people like you're talking about, they're putting themselves and others at risk, and I that's not okay with me because I have given up summits and rescued people, and like you said earlier, that was my purpose for being there apparently, but I feel like it could have all been avoided
Mm-hmm.
if they had a little better emotional intelligence, a little self-awareness. So anyways, continue. Sorry for that side note.
No, that's a great connection point, and I think to bring it back to this piece about um, driving ourselves to accomplish something So willfully, we're not taking the step back. Sometimes that can put us in danger. I think for me, it was actually an advantage because I wasn't tethered to this. I have to summit because this is a life goal. I have all
Hmm.
these sponsors or people are counting on me. It was like I'm just trusting that I'm supposed to be here, and I'm just trusting that I'm supposed to continue taking these steps.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that again, I felt very strongly that I'm sure many people could attest to this, but like it's not going to happen to me. Like I'm not going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Same in the
Um,
military, right?
totally. But I again, it felt very much like that, and I never really had that fear of death that I think a lot of people walk through that journey with that weighs on them energetically in a large way. For me, it wasn't. There was so much mental streamlining that I was able to do because I wasn't worried about whether or not I'm supposed to or whether or not I'm going to. It was just doing the steps that I was on.
Yeah.
Um,
Very slow steps.
yes, yes, at times. I remember
Where
just go ahead, go
what's
ahead.
the ladder situation? Was the five ladder still there in the Western Cumb?
No, no five ladders. They had, I think, two or three at most. It was probably
Okay.
two, honestly. Um, and that was all pretty much in the ice fall. There was like a ladder or two occasionally um, on the Western Cone, but most of it was pretty
Isn't it
established.
crazy? Back in the early days, they would bring trees and they would lay
Really?
logs across. Yeah.
Jeez, man.
Rattle
Ah,
that. And, I think they've like hammered nails through their shoes. When you think
that's
about the
that's
people that
remarkable.
paved the way for what it is now, now it's a repeatable path. I mean, it's always ever
Mm,
changing and everything else. You got the icefall doctors and whatnot. But you got weather prediction, you got the gear,
mhm.
just yeah, it's so different. And like you said, like even from 2011 to you went in 2024.
24.
So a year ago, yeah. I mean, that's 13 years later, it's things change, yeah. It's
Oh,
wild. I know like Garrett Madison and some of the guys are still guiding up there. Some of my friends, and they're seeing it all. Even the was the Hillary Step, is that even there anymore? Hillary.
I wouldn't know because I wasn't there when it was, I guess. But from what people have said, they're like, yeah, like some rocks collapsed and it's not really a step.
It
But
was a
I don't
40-foot
know.
rock climb before.
Okay, okay. There was plenty like on that kind of final ridge line when you're pushing out for the summit after the South Summit.
Hmm.
Um, there was like definitely some good steep little sections where you're climbing, but it
Hmm.
wasn't a 40 foot
Okay. I heard it had collapsed. I haven't really asked anyone who's been there recently. And then that Cornice Traverse, like that
mm,
last section right there, it's that 2 mile drop on each side.
mhm.
That's when I give talks and stuff, that's always an eye opener for
Yeah, I
people
think
like to legit.
I have heard, and I didn't read a lot of I didn't read like Into Thin Air, like any, with the Everest kind of storybooks. And I try to have an uncolored experience as much as I could.
Hmm.
But I knew about that. And when I arrived, I was like, this is surreal, like how high and how narrow of a platform I'm on right now. Um, and one of I think the starkest moments on that kind of last ridgeline going out, you could see, or I could see, towards the summit, there was a light. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe like somebody put a light up on the summit. We're getting closer, and I could see it kind of approaching. And as I get up to close enough to make out more details, it was actually a guy who had passed away maybe a day or two before, and
Oh
his
man.
headlamp was still on.
Wow.
Um,
It's a
and it
solid
was
battery.
Yeah. So it was just kind of beaming up there. I have like one of the pictures I took, I can see it in the picture, and it's just this very surreal moment of like a life that's shining, right? That has gone, that is so close to this destination that we're all working towards. Um, but it's still like illuminating, kind of a message or a lesson or
Yeah.
I don't know, hard to describe,
No, it
but
is. No one else
yeah.
can even imagine that you being there, being in that moment, being in the death zone,
Mm.
exhausted, climbing through the night, and that's your guiding light.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
in a weird way. Like the marker of death was like the guide. But with that, like there was another climber we had passed on the way up who had deceased as well. And first coming up to it, it was kind of this surreal again moment. Like, of course, that I knew that people, die, and we'd heard reports of a couple going up, but you don't
Mhm.
know if you're going to see them, you don't know when. And so
Yeah.
we get up to the first one, and it's kind of like, again, surreal. It felt almost like staged. I was like, is this actually happening? Right.
Yeah.
And I just was like, okay, I'm going to ground here. And I just like stopped climbing and I just sat and I didn't actually sit down, but I just like
Yeah.
sat in that moment, and was with this body. And I just like said a prayer. I was like, rest in peace, climber. Like, may you carry on. But it was, yeah, that very grounding moment of like coming to terms with something that is possible that I had kind of, again, maybe sidestepped or not fully carried the weight of through my climb.
Hmm.
Because it was this like, yeah, it can happen to people, it can happen to them, but
Yeah.
being directly confronted is a different story.
Sure is. Yeah. And you never know their story. You never know what happened.
Yeah.
When I went up, I ended up soloing on May 15th, 2011, and a famous Japanese climber had passed away at the South Summit. It's right below, like in Hillary, up
Mm,
there. And when I got up there, I'm completely alone. It was kind of the same type of thing. And he was kind of like stashed in, there was like a cave at that point down there, but same type of thing. It just
mm,
reality. I'm like
mm-hmm.
steps away from the true summit. Just got to bounce over this rock wall and go. But it just puts perspective. And same thing. I prayed and kept moving. It's all you can do.
Yeah. It carried the man with the headlamp, um, because it was very close to the summit as well. And like when I arrived, and there was a couple of the other folks. There was five of us total, five climbers, five Sherpas, um, who summited for my team that night. And the one who was there first, he was kind of getting ready to head out, and he stops. We hug. I'm like kind of teary eyed because I had made it to the summit, and he's like, "Just remember, it's only half done."
Hmm.
And I was like, with that message that we had just crossed, and then that kind of like, it's kind of hard to actually embody the joy of the moment, and I really let myself embody it pretty strongly, I think. But
Yeah.
it's that you have to get back down.
Yeah.
And there's so much more, and more people die going down than going up. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You're exhausted. Sun's out now.
right.
Become very unstable. And yeah, you just blew your load going up, and you've been probably awake for almost 2 days straight at this point. It's not like you're sleeping up there above, going up load, saying everything. So,
Yeah.
well, congratulations for making it up and down. You got all your digits.
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, um,
That's good.
didn't lose any there. Yeah. There was one guy who had like mild, but I guess he recovered everything, which was great. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I think definitely, formative experience in a lot of ways. And again, nothing that I would entirely recommend to a person of
Well, that's good.
stable mind. But no, I'm kidding.
I'm the
Uh,
same. I mean, and it's something I love doing, but I,
yeah.
I know that, there's over 100 billion people to have ever existed on this earth, and
Hmm.
only, a few thousand that have summited Everest. Like it's
Right.
not for everyone. There's a lot of things out there. Just because it's the highest peak and you think you're going to get some glory behind it, it's not the case. Most people are forever I know I am forever
Mm,
traumatized from the
totally.
experience that you'll get, going after a goal and trying to find your purpose and then pivoting in that moment, your whole purpose just shifts.
Mm,
And you just realize there's a plan so far outside of what my personal plan was that I had no idea. And now my
mm.
life shifts towards that, and just very blessed to be here and to be able to share that. So, so how was the descent? Because like you said, most accidents occur on the way down. Like, how was that for you?
Yeah. Well, just to touch on, that last statement you made there, I think
Sure.
that's really valuable. That point about informing our future from even the traumas of the present. And essentially, again, tying it back into this success versus failure, it's like obviously you met with success and you came down safely after your very harrowing experience. and you survived, but all of that has now informed you into what you do and who you are. And everyone who I think goes through something, whether it's a success or it's all how we view it, rather, I guess, and what we can take from it. So I just, yeah, I really appreciated that point. I think it's a great one to drive home. So, um, but yeah, the descent was it was long. Obviously, that day, you push from four to summit and then all the way down to two. So it was a long slog. And by the time we got to camp two, basically our team lead, his tactic is to go at the very end of the weather window so that
Mhm.
most of the other climbers have already summited. There's no lines. It was literally, there was five of us, five climbers, five Sherpas,
Mhm.
no one else on the summit ridge that day.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so we had, kind of all to ourselves, which is a beautiful experience. But
Did anyone come up from the Tibet side?
no, I mean, they might have when we were like not
Okay.
at the summit, but we didn't see anybody. And I don't think
There's a
any,
Himalayan database you can actually check.
yeah, I didn't see any other reported
Okay.
summits on that date.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
That's the way to have it. It's funny because everyone's brave behind a keyboard, and they get attacked, and probably for this, we'll both get attacked. We'll team up, we'll take them on. But yeah, to have no lines or anything it's a unique experience because there's only a few days you can summit on Everest.
mm,
It's at 29,035 feet. It's up in the jet stream, the death zone. You can't survive long. There's one way up, one way down on each side. So, most people don't understand that if you climb other mountains, a lot of times you can go side by side or you're roped up together. It's a different experience. So that's amazing that you had that because it is unique.
totally. And I really credit David, our team lead, for that decision because um, I think a few days before when we were pushing from three to four, um, we had heard about a cornice collapse and there was two people who weren't clipped in and they just went over and definitely unrecoverable. So,
Yeah.
and it was due to 100 or so people, being up there all at once,
Oh
trying to
yeah. Like
trying to
trying to
get
go
in.
around. Yeah.
And so, yeah, incredibly grateful for the timing of all that and um, how he led the team. I think it was really really important. But yeah, the downhill, the again that gravity assistance. Um,
Good and bad, right?
yeah, yeah. There's kind of the exhaustion. Everything is built up, but being buoyed by the victory, right? Buoyed by that kind of okay, I did the thing, and now I'm coming down. But again, it's actually the Sherpa mantra, "Starry be starry," like was formally for going up, like slowly, slowly,
Hmm.
and it was just one step at a
If you
time.
do Kilimanjaro, it'll be pole pole. Same thing.
Pole,
It's
pole,
slowly,
yeah,
slowly.
yeah, slowly, slowly. So I had used that a lot on the way up, um, and actually our team, we would have kind of like poetry nights, or not like, just like sharing people's writings, or we'd
Hmm.
have kind of community dialogues in the evenings after dinner. And one of the gentlemen from Ireland, his name's Mihal, he shared a poem and he said, I can't remember the whole thing, but one of the lines was like, do nothing in haste. And, make sure you can be aware of the outcomes and all that stuff. But the do nothing in haste part really stuck with me.
Hmm.
And as I was coming down, I was like, okay, now even more than ever, it is slowly, slowly coming down
Hmm.
because that gravity can pull and the adrenaline can make me overconfident, but I am not complete. I am not safe. It is not over until I'm back and I've arrived and um, I touch those base camp rocks. But
Even right before you step off the ice fall, it's that bulletproof Basong, my Sherpa friend, he took his crampons off like 5 feet before and just zoop, poof, eats it
oh
right there.
man,
I'm like, yep, you're not
yeah,
safe until you are at camp. And then even then.
yeah, you got to get back from. It's always like, and that actually was a kind of a stark sticking point was that we're always not safe, right? Even when we're done with the climb, we're done with the adventure. It's like, okay, like, yeah, you're walking a base camp, you slip and trip on a rock and you snap your spine or whatever. It's like, okay, then you got to get to Kathmandu. It's like, okay, well, now I'm in Kathmandu. And it's like, well, now I got to get back to the States. And it's like, what happens in the States? So there's this kind of lack of safety, I think that I kind of grew to appreciate in the world that yes, I'll put myself in harm's way potentially or dangerous situations. Um, but is it that much different than living a life and being blind to those risks? Um,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Everest definitely opens your eyes. I mean, everything that you've done has it's been layers of just interesting things that have pushed you beyond your limits and
mm,
made you who you are. So it's an
mm.
interesting journey. Was there one takeaway from, we'll just say Asia in general, because it's all encompassing thing that you accomplished that has changed you?
I think in a large way, the integrative experience that Everest was for me, it allowed me to like re-whole myself. Um, because again, leaving the military, feeling that loss of identity, feeling um, disillusion in purpose and lostness overall, right? And then having these kind of experiences in different avenues that I was then able to kind of cobble together into this one, literally like this one great feat, this one summit. It was like, I'm going to pull my experiences from here, from the Navy, from firefighting, and like all of this stuff was able to come together in this way. It allowed me to embody all of that in one singular purpose for one singular mission. Um, and bring it all home, right? I think for me it allowed me to bring all of that home. And I don't know whether or not everyone is going to have, this kind of single integrative moment in their life, but in a small way, I think just taking the pieces that I knew were part of my path and being able to bring them all together allows me now in my kind of daily world to recognize that like whether or not I'm using some in college, whether or not I'm using organic chemistry or whatever, class calculus that I took, I know and I trust that all of those pieces are integrating in me and
Mm.
creating me to be what I will need to be when the time arises. So honoring and appreciating everything that I do. And I hope that that message can maybe carry to people who we can get lost in like, why am I doing this or what's this for? Um, but just recognizing that maybe you don't need to know what it's for. And I definitely didn't need to know what all the pieces were for. But they will come together when they're supposed to. They're supposed to.
Yeah, that's powerful. All right, you want to pivot to a rescue scenario? Want to
Sure, let's
want to
do
be a
it.
rescue swimmer again?
Why not?
Okay, let's do something fun here. That's interesting. Okay, I don't know if I've done this one yet. A deep cave extraction after an earthquake. Okay, the scenario: an earthquake collapses a cave system, trapping spelunkers inside with limited oxygen. You get the call, you're launching in your Romeo, you're flying up to the mountains to extract these trapped spelunkers. Go. What's going through your mind?
All right. Well, it's actually fortunate that I'm a scuba diver as well. Um, I'm not a cave diver full on, but I would feel bold enough to get there. But yeah, I think initially getting that call and knowing that it's on is something that I really rise to, and so I would just kind of get in that moment. I think anytime there's been someone who's like asked or an emergency's gone up, I've always like jumped onto my feet and ran straight for it. So flying out there, basically sitting in the helicopter, there's going to be a lot of excitement, I think, in myself. Maybe my crew chief, whoever I'm with, together, we're I think going to have that kind of confidence in each other to succeed. And the planning and most of that stuff I think is done ahead of time. It becomes this moment of like we've prepared everything that needs to be prepared. Now it's about taking the action, whatever gear that we would need in the helicopter already. Um, we arrive on scene. I assume maybe that divers or someone has already pulled them out, and we're basically I'm going to go down and assess these guys, or
Yeah, maybe.
maybe I
Yeah.
go and scuba in there and kind of draw some line and um, create a corridor. And I think when I imagine like coming across these kind of souls that are lost in a cave and trapped in that cave in that moment, the most important thing I could do would be uh, the epitome of calm,
Mhm.
because the last thing they're going to want is an excited person and like a stressed out or like, okay, like come on and do this thing. It's as calm as I can possibly be in that moment, which I think reflects, this kind of idea of being certain in your training up to a certain point. And the training that I did as a rescue swimmer, being able to get there and arrive with that certitude in my pocket and be like, okay, hey, here is the oxygen. We're gonna just move out of this environment, um, and it will be okay. And being able to provide a person with um, that comfort would be paramount. So getting them out of the cave, probably doing some medical assessments, seeing what's injured, airway, breathing, circulation, covering the basics, and then getting them out of there, back, bring them into the helicopter. Probably have to, I assume, do a hoist recovery, since I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of place for the helicopter to land on these rocks. But yeah, pull them back in and head back to whatever hospitals nearby and kind of follow up there. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting, huh? Because you've been out for a little while now, but
yeah,
it's easy to go back. How many times were you launched? You never know what you're really getting into. You get
right.
misinformation once you get on scene, but it's better to, map something out, have that plan, and then, readjust as you get the details. So, yeah, I'd say you saved most of them.
Yeah, we save what we can, right?
Yep.
That was a
Well,
cool experiment.
yeah, it's fun. Do you have an itch or like a desire to climb any more mountains?
At this point, I think I just follow the call, of whatever that is in the moment. And right now, my call is academics,
Hmm.
and working in my degree and kind of climbing that mountain.
Yeah, sure.
Um, and I will continue to carry like an adventurous spirit and a climbing, outdoors spirit about me. But I do feel that, especially ironically, right now, I have a break between classes between spring and summer, and normally I would be chomping at the bit to like book a flight, go abroad, travel a bit, do something. But I have felt very strongly in my heart to just stay and to
Hmm.
be, and I'm actually very content with where I am right now, just in my own home. And I think a big part of that is not that I needed to go and climb a mountain to be happy with what I have, but
Hmm.
just this recognition is really settling in, where it's like it's okay to just be, it's okay to not go and pursue the next climb and the next thing,
Yeah,
um, and that's been really valuable for me since I've been back as well.
that's great. It's great to hear that. Yeah, contentment, it can be a hard thing to do, especially when you're so driven, but the
Hmm.
timing's not always right. So the last thing you want to do is force it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd say if you're looking for me, so like even being down like an Aconcagua, if you're just looking at the seven summits,
Hmm.
it's high altitude, but just such a cool journey to do. And just
Mm,
again, to be like in South America. And when I went and did Vincent Massif in Antarctica, like spending time just a solo journey for myself for like 5 days through Patagonia, just
wow.
amazing. And then Antarctica is just next level. So
I can
I feel like you would, knowing as much as I know of you and like your mindset and where you're at, like it's very, very spiritual and just people don't just show up in these places, but we show
imagine.
up and we find ourselves. So I think
Mm,
but yeah, we'll stay in contact on that. But before I let you go, you've had very unique experiences, incredible experiences, and you haven't even begun. But based on your time in the military, snowboard instructor, firefighter, your journey through India and to the top of the world, and even, current ability to be content, what is some wisdom you would want to leave with our listeners?
so during the climb, and we kind of touched on this actually earlier, but I talked about the poetry nights and kind of this opportunity to share thoughts that we had amongst our team. And I wrote a little poem basically about just exactly being where you're at. And one of the things that I spoke to was be in the suffering of this climb, like for myself, just to be in this moment. Because when it's over, right, when it's done, I'm going to have a big pizza and a beer in Kathmandu, and I'm going to be there, and all of this will be gone. I will have the memory, I will know what it's like, but it won't be my reality. And my reality will be that pizza, that bar, that restaurant, whatever it is. So as much as we possibly can, and this is something, I've picked up from meditation and mindfulness, but something that sticks to me stronger than ever is to just be in my now. And I
Hmm.
would tell people that whatever your now is, whatever your call of the moment is, whatever situation that you find yourself in, that requires your attention or your focus, be in that now, because soon enough it will be over and you'll be in a different now. And you'll
Hmm.
think back on it and be like, well, that happened, but you can never put yourself back there and
Hmm.
truly, truly be in that
Yeah,
again, because it's only fleeting. So, um, yeah, I
that's
think
great advice.
rising to the now is about it, as concise as I would say it.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. Yeah, because now will never happen again. Now is now. So embrace it. No, that's beautiful. Thank you. Well, Evan, thanks so much for spending the time sharing your great wisdom, your experiences. It's just a pleasure to get to know you. And, look at us. We're the only two rescue swimmers to stay on top of the world. That's pretty
Yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. Brian, thank you seriously so much for reaching out and connecting here. I'd love to meet sometime in person, shake your hands, and catch up a little bit more, hear about your story too, if that's possible. But
Yeah, of
thank you.
course. Cool. And for everyone else, thanks for joining. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.